Hi everyone, welcome back to Visually Hidden Selects. I'm Peter O'Brien, and today I would like to talk to you about John Carpenter's Big Trouble in Little China from 1986, directed by John Carpenter and starring Kurt Russell, Dennis Dun, Kim Cattrall, Victor Wong, and James Hong. This was John Carpenter and Kurt Russell's fourth collaboration. They had first worked together on a television movie called Elvis, and then of course on Escape from New York, which is my personal favorite. You know, if you watch Escape from New York, the character that he plays, Snake Plissken, is a very strong, silent, heroic type. And in Big Trouble in Little China, he's playing almost the exact opposite. You know, his character has heroic aspirations and heroic ideals, but he's not as skilled as, say, Snake Plissken. And it's interesting to note that this film was actually originally written as a Western by Gary Goldman and David Weinstein. And it took place in the 1880s, and it was still San Francisco Chinatown, but the studio felt that being a Western and then slipping into this supernatural mysticism ghost story was kind of a big stretch for the audience. So they hired W.D. Richter, who had recently written and directed Buckaroo Banzai. And if you've ever seen Buckaroo Banzai and you watch Big Trouble in Little China, you can definitely see a connection between the two films in terms of the voice and in terms of the narrative style. You know, but when it comes to the visual style and the actual storytelling, that's all John Carpenter. And it's really just kind of interesting because this is one of the few films that John Carpenter directed that he did not have a hand in the writing at all. And the pacing on this movie is really, really fast. You know, there's a very strong energy that's embedded into this storytelling. And part of it is the editing, part of it is the music, but another part of it is just how quickly the actors are delivering their dialogue. Especially Dennis Dun and Kim Cattrall, they are just really good at delivering their dialogue very quickly, but also very coherently. And one of the things that I really love about this film is how it defies convention. Kurt Russell is the star, yes, but he's not exactly the hero of the story. We, the audience, connect with him because he's the outsider that's pulled into this story. And so we kind of make him the hero, but in reality, Wang Chi, his friend, played by Dennis Dun, is the hero of the film. He has all of the knowledge, all of the wisdom, all of the skills. He's kicking everybody's ass, while Jack Burton just kind of, you know, fumbles through the fights, and he occasionally gets some hits in there. He's kind of the sidekick. So there's a role reversal that's going on in this film that really makes it very interesting in terms of a dynamic. You got your hero and your sidekick, but your sidekick doesn't know that he's the sidekick. And Dennis Dun as Wang Chi, I mean, oh my god, you know, he kind of comes out of nowhere, but this is really his film. I think one of the things that I really love about this film is just how many characters and how many character actors are featured in the film proper. And it's just such a breath of fresh air that really lends it a sense of credibility while you're watching it, because it is so fantastic and it is so supernatural that these characters and these actors that you're not entirely familiar with kind of just help ease you into the sincerity of the story. But everybody in this film is really fantastic. You know, Kim Cattrall as Gracie Law, she gives a very strong performance, and she's also giving a very smart performance. You know, her character is really intelligent, and it's almost like she's the brains and Kurt Russell's character is the brawn. So she really brings something to the story, and then even when her character is in peril, she's not exactly a damsel in distress, you know, she holds her own throughout all of the big trouble in Little China. I don't think there could have been more perfect casting than Victor Wong as Egg Shen. He really was just born to play this role. You know, when you see him on screen, he is the most authentic character in the film. He looks like an ancient Chinese sorcerer that's just waiting for his day. And he gets that day against James Hong, who is probably the second best cast role and probably the best performance in the film. You know, James Hong, he is a character actor. He's probably been in 200, 400, 600 movies, television shows, and video games, and he's probably best known for playing David Lo Pan in Big Trouble in Little China, simply because this is his most significant and meaty role in a Hollywood film. You know, when you think about an antagonist, he really delivers a very dynamic performance because he does have this history, and he does evoke this kind of almost empathy from the audience, however brief it may be because of his agenda. Nevertheless, his portrayal is a real highlight of the film. Like most other John Carpenter films, he did compose the score for this film, and it really is probably his best score overall. You know, it just has a lot of nice themes that are introduced and then come back around. It also helps with the pacing of the story because the music brings in a lot of drive and a lot of tension. In addition to the score, John Carpenter wrote and sang the theme song for the film that plays over the end credits, which is kind of a surprise if you've ever heard him speak versus how he's singing the song. He has a little band with his friends Nick Castle and Tommy Lee Wallace called the Coupe de Villes that pop up on his soundtracks every now and then, and they are the credited artists for the song Big Trouble in Little China. This film was also the fifth and final collaboration between John Carpenter and Dean Cundey, who is the cinematographer for the film. They had first worked on Halloween, and for me, Dean Cundey is one of the greatest cinematographers ever. He just has such a great grasp of lighting and camera usage and movement and using it to tell the story and facilitate the story. There are some beautiful shots that are lit so well. Anybody else, you know, it's very easy to overlight a shot and then it kind of looks almost like a comedy, or to make it too dark and then people don't know what the heck is going on. Dean just, you know, he has such a great toned eye for light and exposure. And this film, it does have some really, really dark scenes and sequences, but they look so crisp and so beautiful. I remember the first time I actually saw this movie, I was just a small child watching TV one afternoon, flipping through the channels, and then the scene where they're in the elevator and it starts to flood, and I just remember thinking that was so cool. And then when they finally get out of the elevator and they're swimming through the hell of the upside down sinners, it was, you know, of course scary and creepy, but as a monster kid, I was really excited by that visual. And then I was not leaving the television for the rest of the film at that point. It like instantly became one of my favorite films. And I actually got this VHS. This was my first ever VHS that was my own, and I got it in 1988, shortly after it came out, because I was watching the movie on TV every chance I could get, and so my mother just finally broke down and bought me my own copy of it so I could enjoy it endlessly. And so it goes without saying that this is also the first John Carpenter film that I ever saw. And while Escape from New York is probably my favorite John Carpenter film, I would say that Big Trouble in Little China is definitely his funnest film. Because in many ways, it really is the ultimate movie. You know, it has action, it has adventure, it has fantasy, it has horror, it has drama, it has comedy, it has romance. And it's really just for people who love movies, who love going to the movies, who love seeing a great story and great performances and just seeing something that is tremendously well made. So that's it for Big Trouble in Little China. I really hope you like this recommendation, and please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future selections. If you do watch Big Trouble in Little China, leave us a comment and let us know what you think of the film. We will be discussing it at length on the next Visually Hidden Selects podcast, so be sure to tune into that. And until next time, see ya!